Hello, my name is Lorna, and today we're going to be learning how to make this geometric tape art. It's an abstract design, and you can make it any way that you want. I was playing around with the tape, and I like to have a lot of little shapes and a lot of big shapes. So I'm going to show you how to use this tape to make straight lines. This is a 1/2 inch artist tape, but you could use masking tape or any low tack tape. And low tack just means that it's not as sticky as normal tape. You would not want to use Scotch tape or like duct tape or anything like that, because it would stick permanently to your canvas. You might be able to get away with using Scotch tape if you do a tape hack that I'm going to tell you. So you take the tape off of the roll and you put it on your clothing, and it gets kind of linty. And you do that 3 or 4 times, and then you put it on your canvas after that, and it just makes it so it doesn't stick as much. So it turns your high tack tape into low tack tape using the lint from your fabric. That was something that a college professor taught me, and it's amazing because it makes the tape not stick to your canvas or paper. If you are using paper, I would recommend using only masking tape or artist tape for that. And that's just because the paper will tear, whereas the canvas, you have a little bit more leeway with what you're using. If you're peeling Scotch tape off your canvas, it might take a while because if it's high tech, but it's probably not going to damage the canvas underneath. Whereas if you're using paper, it would most definitely rip it up. So that's something to take into consideration. You also don't have to just use canvas or paper. You could do this technique on wood. You could do it on, I've seen people use it for chalk art and do chalk art on their fences, which is really cool. That would be a really great thing to do while you're at home, is get some sidewalk chalk or some chalk pastels, tape out your fence, your backyard fence or your patio fence, or even just your patio slab, and do this in a large scale. It's temporary, which is cool, and you can change it up from time to time. So I'm just adding the tape here in totally random ways. There's no rhyme or reason to how I am adding this tape on here. And that's because it's just kind of, it goes with the flow. You could plan this out using a ruler like I showed before. You could do diamond shapes or do octagons and use math. For this tutorial, I'm just keeping it simple. So the one thing that I'm doing, you'll see I'm trimming some of the areas of my tape. And that's because I want the lines to be really clean, so I don't want any little bits hanging over and overlapping. So I'm just putting it on. As long as your end is within the other tape end, so you see how that piece of tape was right at the tape, and I'm putting them kind of so that the ends are not hanging off, then you're fine. You don't have to trim it. But see there, I trimmed it because it was overhanging. So you want to make sure that you get any ripples or bubbles out of your tape as you're laying it down. You don't want any gaps in your tape, because when you peel it up, you're going to have a bad time if you get tape underneath there. But no worries, if you do get paint underneath your canvas, underneath your, like where you don't want it on the white parts, then you can do touch-ups. Now, if you're using a canvas that's not white, so say you paint it or prime it with a different color, or you're using something that you've collaged and doing this on top of, you definitely want to be very careful with how you're laying your tape down. You can also put your tape down, do a base color, and then paint your individual colors, and the base color will, if you match it to the base color that you already have, will bleed through, but the top color will not. So that's a really great way to prevent some stragged edges. You could also use painter's tape for this. all tape will have some leakage. I've never been able to do this where I didn't have any little marks that I had to touch up. It always has marks that you have to touch up, and that's just because the tape is not perfect, and it's not. Even if you do it on your walls as designed, I've never been able to get it to be 100% error-free. So I'm going to continue taping this until it's all the way done, and then I'm going to grab my paint. The colors that I am using for today's project are primaries, black, white, and pink. And so my primaries are red, yellow, and blue, and I'm using a brand called Brea Reese. It's heavy-bodied acrylic, but you can use any paint, any tones that you want. I also have gold, and I might use some iridescent medium later, I'm not sure. But I have the primaries, and I also throw in this a magenta. It's a pink, because I find that when I use a cadmium red and I mix that with blue, like I have ultramarine blue here, if I mix the cadmium red and the ultramarine blue, you get kind of a brown purple, like it's not a true purple, and that's just because the pigments that are in a lot of these synthetic paints are not true. So if you were to use real stone ground pigments, you'd probably get a much better purple just mixing red and blue, but that is not the case for me. So I am using the magenta so that I can get a nice bright purple, true purple, and that's just because the pinky undertones are going to help out a whole lot, and it also has a little bit of white in there as well. And I'll show you a purple using a little bit of red as well. So I'm going to finish taping this, and then I'm going to prep my workstation for painting, and I'll be right back. All right, so it's all taped up. I have my brushes. I'm just using some flat brushes here, and I like to use the flat brushes because I can get nice crisp edges when I do my touch-ups. For this part, laying down the original paint, it does not matter, but I don't want to have to get more brushes out, so I'm just using the flat tip ones. I do have some gold paint that I'm going to be using that I didn't talk about earlier. This is Enamel's brand, Metallic Gold Superior Coverage. You can use any gold paint if you would like to replicate this. You could also add in, there's like iridescent mediums you could add into your paint. You could top it with some glitter. You can add different texturing. There's texturing mediums you can add in there. There's mattifying mediums. I mean, it's really up to you. The colors that you choose are up to you as well. So I just am adding some black to the top here. I'm gonna do a black to purple color scheme, as you saw before in the beginning of this video. I am trying to do some complementary colors in here as well. These colors that I'm choosing go with my home quite well. So I recommend using colors that you're going to like and that you're gonna live with, or if you're giving this as a gift that they're going to like, or if you're selling it, look at the colors that are the most trendy right now. I would say that gem tones are always in trend right now. So, all right, so I'm just adding my black, and I mixed a little bit of black and made a green using blue and yellow. So I mixed my blue and yellow and a little bit of black to make like an olive green. It's not really reading on camera, so it just looks black. But hopefully the photo that I showed at the beginning shows that it is a dark green. And I'm just going over this in no particular order. I anticipate that a little bit is going to get under my tape one way or another, but if you wanted to be more careful, you could go away from the direction of the tape. So imagine the tape is a rug. You don't want to sweep the paint under the rug. So what you would do is you would brush the opposite way of the rug so that you don't get the paint underneath it or the dirt underneath the rug. So now I'm going in with a lighter green, and all I did was add a little bit more yellow to the green that I already had. I tend to work wet and a little bit messy on my brushes. And I'm doing that specifically here because I don't want solid colors. I want there to be a little variation within each triangle or shape. And I'm actually going to do a even lighter green, so I need a little bit more yellow. And I'm just mixing that straight in. And my cat says hello today. He is hanging out with me while I paint, as he always does. Surprised he has not put a paw print in this yet. Okay, so my lighter green, I'm working dark to light, and then I'm going to put some complementary colors next to this green, and some analogous colors. So analogous colors means that on the color wheel they're right next to each other. So if I'm doing a light green, my analogous color is going to be yellow, and if I'm doing a complementary color, it's going to be opposite the color wheel. So if green is on the color wheel, opposite the color wheel is going to be red. So I'm not going to do a pure red because I don't think that will go great with my painting, but I am going to do a pinky red, and I'll show you that. So when I mix my colors, I just mix them back and forth. I'm not getting a solid mix. You could use color straight from the tube. I actually only have primaries right now. I don't have any additional colors at home, so I have to mix all my own, which I prefer because you can get some real custom blends. So as you can see, it looks like I've covered up all my tape lines and things like that. You can be more careful so that you can see where to peel up your tape lines. My tape does go around the edge. Always paint your edges. My paint goes around my edges so that I can peel up my tape easier that way. But really there's no wrong way to do this. Once you have the tape down, it's pretty much protected. Your canvas is protected. So I'm just trying to get nice thin layers. I don't want some chunky buildup in the corners or anything like that. I want it to be smooth, and so that's my main goal. All right, so I mixed up my purple using magenta and the ultramarine blue. And you can see it's a really nice purple. This is more of a blue purple. I am going to make more of a red purple as I go up towards the yellow. So I'm doing the yellow tones next to the purple tones because yellow is the complement to purple. And I'm going to be putting some more red tones next to the yellow tone because it is analogous to the yellow. Well, orange is, but pretty close there. So we have our purpley blue at the bottom, and then I'm going to work to more a warm purple as I get closer to the yellow and the greens. And I'm mixing as I go, so you'll see that I add more magenta in. I'm going to be adding some red in, and I'm just kind of going all around. And you'll see that I go side to side, up and down, back and forth when I'm painting, and that is to get a really smooth look, and it's also to blend my paint just a little bit more. So I added a little bit of that true cadmium red in there, and you can see instantly that that magenta really warms up and turns a brighter red purple, and so it's going to be a nicer complement to that really like lime green towards the top. And I'm going in with a little bit more down at the bottom because I have some more lime green towards the bottom there. And I want to bring some of that darker purple in the corner as well. So both my corners are going to be a darker purple, and then I'm going to have my red purples towards the yellow. And again, the colors that you do are totally up to you. You could look at a color wheel and do complements. You could do reds and oranges. You could do greens and reds. You could do purples and yellows, or you can just do like a more monochromatic scheme, and you could do all blues, like shades of blue, light blue, dark blue, medium blue, maybe add a teal in there, or maybe a red for a pop of color and a little bit of complement. So the colors you do here are really, really up to you. You could even spend the time and do rainbow sections in each individual one, or polka dots, or, I mean, it's really limitless. You could do all black and do different textures of black paint in your triangles, and that would look really neat too. You could also use this same technique without paint. You could use oil pastels, you could use chalk, you could use markers, pencils, pens, whatever you want to use. And the tape is just there to block off your canvas so you get nice crisp lines. Okay, so as I finish up this painting, I am going to add a little bit of gold in there. And I start with the gold on the purple here, and I work it into almost all of the shapes in just a little section here or there. There's no rhyme or reason to where I'm putting it. It's not like a true highlight. I'm not following the direction of any light or anything like that. I just wanted some little dimension in there, a little shine. So I put it on with my brush initially, and then decided that the edges were too crisp for my liking. So I ended up taking my finger and finger painting a little bit. You absolutely do not have to finger paint, and if you do, you can wear gloves. I finger paint quite a bit, especially when I'm doing things like clouds or anything that's really wispy and soft. I tend to use my finger. And I feel like it just blends out the edges quite nicely. They sell sponge brushes and things like that help with that. As you can see, I don't really change my tool out that often. So if I'm using a brush, usually I'll use the same brush, maybe rinse it a few times while I'm painting. But that's just how I paint, and that's my style. You're welcome to change and wash your brush in between every single color. You can blend your colors ahead of time and plan. That's just not really how my painting flows and how I work. So I'm just adding more gold. You could add glitter. You could add iridescent paint over top of this. You could use any different kind of metallic paint. They have every metallic color. It seems like they have metallic blues and greens and purples and things these days, so that would be a really cool look as well. So after I'm done with the gold, I'm going to peel it up. So when you're peeling up your tape, it's optional. I've heard both ways work great. So some people let their paint dry completely and then peel up their tape. I do not do that. I don't wait for my paint to dry, because I find that sometimes when my paint dries over top of the tape, it makes it difficult to peel up, because the paint kind of seals the edges of the tape, if that makes sense. Because the paints that I'm using have a lot of plastic in them. They are going to be almost like a little sheet of plastic or leather over top of that tape. So unless I'm using an X-Acto blade, sometimes it will rip the paint that I don't want to come up off, and that's no good. So I like to do it when it's damp or slightly wet and just get my fingers a little painty. But you're welcome to wait until it dries. Some people swear by letting it dry, and they say they get a cleaner line. I don't know that that's true, but it's really, there's no right or wrong way. So if you're maybe a little bit slower with painting, or maybe you need to take a break, you can totally let that paint dry on there. I do find that when you leave painter's tape or masking tape onto a canvas for more than a few days, the adhesives start to sink in and it's harder to remove. So I like to do these projects at least in the same day. So I'm just peeling off this tape. Super satisfying to watch. Looking at those clean white lines appearing underneath. And that's really all there is to this project. I am later off camera going to take a little bit of white acrylic and clean up my edges. That white acrylic is going to make my canvas underneath a little bit shiny, so I am going to seal it later on when it's fully dry. I'm not going to seal it today. I want the paint to dry, and then I'm going to seal it with a clear varnish so it's nice and shiny. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and that you try it out yourself. Please like and subscribe for more videos. Have a wonderful day.